What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Buffalo Commander. I'm your host, Alex. Please like, share, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and comment. Wanted to make this a relatively short video today. Wanted to go into a couple things that were going around on Twitter as far as draft-related content goes and the wide receiver position. As you can tell by the tagline, this is going to be a wide receiver or bust conversation. I think it was worth noting the reasoning behind it and why that would be why that should be the only option at the end of round one, unless something crazy happens, right? So just to start off, I'm not wide receiver or bust if wide receiver 13 is sitting there and defensive tackle 1 is on the board. That's stupid. I'm not going to do that. My point is that based on our draft position and where everything else looks like it's lining up as of right now, unless we're way off, which we could be, wide receiver should be the number one option, and it shouldn't be that close. I wanted to go into a little bit. This is going to be more of a free-flowing conversation, by the way, but wanted to go into a little bit of my reasoning step by step, and also go into some of the comments that Josh Allen made yesterday at an event, some charity event he's at with, I think Terrell Owens was there, and Jordan Palmer was there, and also Kyle Allen was there too. So wanted to go into that a little bit, just so we can hear his comments. And I think they are telling to a certain extent on what maybe not what he wants, but ultimately, like, he's been doing research on these people. And I think it's meaningful, just generally speaking, that he is up to date on the receivers that hypothetically could be available. And also wanted to talk about the ones he did bring up and who was omitted. So here you go.
Guys, I know you always look at draft receivers. Who's a couple guys you love coming out in the draft this year?
Receiver-wise?
Yeah, receivers. Where you're picking late, right? 28,
yeah,
29.
Yeah, not like the guys that probably won't be there.
You can like them.
Yeah, I think the top three guys, Malik Neighbors, Rumbo Duns, and Marvin Harrison Jr. are all three pretty great prospects. Then you get to that kind of second-ish tier, if you will, of Brian Thomas, Adonai Mitchell. I think Keon Coleman, Troy Franklin, Xavier Worthy are all there. Xavier Leggett, who did you guys hear him talk?
No. What is it?
He's got the biggest Southern draw I've ever heard in my entire life. It is. He seems like.
I love it.
I'll tell you what. To watch these guys at the combine, some big, fast, big, tall, heavy, fast dudes. Like it was pretty impressive to watch. So.
You guys played together last year. It's your 5th year in the system, I guess, 6th year in the system.
All right, and that's pretty much it. So one thing I want to note is Ladd McConkey isn't mentioned. Ricky Pearsall's not mentioned. Jermaine Burton, guys like that. Now, I know Ricky Pearsall may be an outside chance, and Burton's probably not in the conversation anyway, but Ladd McConkey is, and he didn't get mentioned at all. I have Ladd McConkey as wide receiver 7 on my board, but I don't think he's a fit on the outside. I know he played a lot on the outside, and just because you line up on the outside in college doesn't mean that it's going to be a situation where you're way out in the boundary. A lot of these guys are playing in the Z or in a quasi, like where he would be lined up in the slot, but he is the only outside receiver on that side. So it looks like he's on the outside receiver, and he gets labeled that way, but technically he's still running like slot type routes from that position on the field, playing tight to the line, tight to the tackle or to the left of the tight end. So I think that's worth noting. I also want to talk a little bit about where our roster stands as it relates to positions of need and what we filled in so far before I go into some of more of my reasoning. But I'm going to do this really quick. First and foremost, we got Mitch Trubisky back. Ty Johnson came back. Curtis Samuel was signed, so that was a boon for the wide receiver room, but he's a Swiss Army knife type of player. I don't really see him as a wide receiver 2 on the boundary, but he can play out there in a pinch just like Khalil Shakir can. He's a little bit more of a Swiss Army knife than Khalil Shakir is, but he's not necessarily like a full-time in any one spot kind of role. He really does just get moved in all over the place, even in the backfield. So Samuel, and then Matt Collins, who's going to be a special teams blocking wide receiver, down the field threat, similar to Gabe Davis. And I've said this before, but I think he could have been done just as much as Gabe if he was in our system from day one versus Gabe Davis being in the system and his skill set's better. Quentin Morris was re-signed. We've gotten Will Clapp at center. I'm looking at my sheet right now. You see my eyes cutting. So he's over there to cover in the center position as far as someone who can have a little bit of flex in the guard and center side of things, but also be a primary backup for Connor McGovern in a pinch. And then we have brought back Taylor Rapp. We signed Mike Edwards to start at free safety, which is a big. That was one of my main targets going in, was to get a free safety fill, and Mike Edwards was near the top of my list. Cam Lewis is re-signed. That was good. We got a Nicholas Morrow, who's probably going to be linebacker 4 or 5. So we filled in almost all of our depth with Milano, Williams, Bernard, Spector, and now Morrow. And then at defensive tackle, we signed Daquan Jones. We brought in Austin Johnson, who's very familiar with Daquan Jones from college and a relatively full-time starter for the last few years as a third defensive tackle, who can also play one tech. Also, Deshaun Williams was signed today, and he is also someone who can play. He lined up in the 5 tech a lot, which is just head up with a tackle and the 3-4 defense. Just to kind of, well, it's not really worth it. Right on the edge of the tackle, I should say, versus like the standard defensive tackle position of the 3 tech or the 1 tech, where the 1 tech just shades right over the right or the left shoulder of the center, and then the 3 tech lines up on the outside shoulder of the guard. So on either side. So that's what the 3 tech does. He's the next step over, basically, is the best way to explain that, generally speaking. So Deshaun Williams is brought in. He's a depth piece. He started, I think, 11 games last year, so he's not completely useless or anything. He's definitely someone who has a good chance of making the roster, in addition to Eli Anku, who's still there on the roster too. We'll probably make it as a DT 5 or 6, depending on how many we keep. And then we brought AJ Epinesa back and Casey Toohill at defensive end. So Casey Toohill had his best season of his career last year. He is a depth defensive end. He had 5.5 sacks for Washington. And I know Kevin really likes him as a rotational player. I think that he is a rotational player. He can probably give you a little juice. He had like a 9-point-something RAS, which is the relative athletic score that they use after the combine every year. So he's a high-end athlete, even though it hasn't really translated on the field quite yet, too. So basically the point is our roster is pretty filled up. Like we could roster a team today and win probably 10 ball games. Maybe more than that. I mean, it's a good football team. The main reasoning behind the wide receiver need, in my opinion, is that the offense looks really hard sometimes. I mean, it looks very difficult. Like there are times where, since 2021, when Gabe Davis took over as wide receiver 2 officially, because Emmanuel Sanders was hurt all at the end of that year, everything's looked difficult because no one creates space other than Stephon Diggs. And I don't want to hear about the tight end position. Also, I know Dalton Kincaid is going to be a really good player, but if Dalton Kincaid was a wide receiver at that size and that speed in the draft, he wouldn't have been a first-round pick. There's a reason he's a tight end. It's because he's a good tight end. He's not a wide receiver. You can say it all you want. Oh, Dalton Kincaid's our next weapon. He might be, but we're talking about a guy who averaged 9 yards a catch last year and 600 yards. It's really not that. It's good. It's the best tight end. It's the best tight end season as a Buffalo Bills in history. But that bar is not that high, first of all. Secondly, yes, tight ends don't historically do well their first year. So that's a good sign for him that he had a really good first tight end year. But let's pump the brakes on him being our number 1 option in the offense. Guy had 2 touchdowns last year, and he disappeared in numerous games where he's just gone. He wasn't there. Like he was non-existent. The playoff game was a great example. The last one we played, the first one we played, he goes off the rails, has like 2 catches for a touchdown, 2 or 3 catches the first drive and a touchdown. We didn't see him again in the fourth quarter, and we were passing the ball. Like, where was he? Like, are these problems? No, tight ends are what they are. Unless you have Travis Kelce or an Antonio Gates in the past, or Tony Gonzalez, they're not your number 1 option. They're never going to be. They're an ancillary option for the offense to get easy completions and them being dynamic as a plus. If you get 700, 800 yards out of them, that's really freaking good. If you get 800 yards out of a wide receiver, we're talking about like, we need to replace you as a wide receiver too, like we did Gabe Davis. So that's main thing. So let's talk about the options. I think that's worth talking about first and foremost. The ones I hear the most are JPJ, the center from Oregon, Jackson Powers Johnson. Great player, really good prospect as a center. What's he going to be? How much better is he than Connor McGovern? How much needle moving does he do? Marginally in year one. I mean, he's a future. He may be great. I mean, way better than maybe McGovern's awesome. I don't know. They believe in him. So we should replace him and move McGovern over, who's marginally better than David Edwards. Is that the answer? I just don't buy it. I don't think that that's going to change the game for us. Like, that's not getting us past the Chiefs and the Bengals, by the way, when they get back healthy. It's not going to work. The thing that's going to help us with the Bengals is that they just won't have a million weapons anymore, and we'll be able to actually stop their offense because their offense is built to beat a defense like ours. And then score more points with them. Like, there's reasons we can't beat the Bengals. Their corners and safeties and linebackers can cover. And we don't have anybody who can get open except for a tight end and Diggs, who's old. He's 30 years old. He'll be 31 this year. What's going to happen then? So that's kind of the way I feel about center. I don't think it moves the needle today. That's the point. And I think that's what we have to keep in mind when we're talking about this. We're trying to win a Super Bowl this year. We're not talking about building a roster for 3 years from now that's going to be elite. Yeah, we want to do that at the same time, but we got to compete too. And what we're missing in games, like I said, since end of 2021, things looked hard at the end of the year. And what's the team's answer? Emmanuel Sanders, John Brown, Gabe Davis, either old vets or banking ourselves on this 4th round wide receiver who played up better than what we drafted him at. Don't get me wrong. He's never been a wide receiver too. He doesn't create separation like that. And he also drops a lot of passes. So that's an issue for me. Let's talk about edge rusher. So how many edge rushers do we know that get drafted in the late first round that end up being good? TJ Watt, he wasn't even supposed to be an edge rusher. He's supposed to be a linebacker when he came out. So what are we banking on? Like, we're going to get a Greg Rousseau or a Jason Owe type player at that part of the draft, or who's the guy that Tampa picked up a few years ago? Joe Tryon. That's what you get. If any of those top 3 guys falls that far, you know there's a reason behind it. Latu is an amazing technician. He's also not, his arms are short, and he's not a superstar athlete. His explosion grades are very low at the combine. So do we stick with that guy? Like, do we grab him because it's a steal with his medicals? I don't think so. Same thing with Verse. He's older. He's an older prospect. By the way, I don't think any of these guys are going to be there. But we're just throwing hypotheticals out. If they fall, there's a reason. Do you take them? I don't think they're going to be there. So that's the thing. That's part of my point of this whole conversation, is that they're not going to be there. They're not. There's no defensive ends or defensive tackles that are going to be there that we're going to want to take a stab on over a wide receiver. The top 3 guys realistically are going to be gone for sure. And a lot of the issues too we see are teams that have been good for a really long time, like the Bills and the Ravens and the Chiefs and the Bengals, have to go pay for a guy. They haven't drafted in the top 15 in years, 5-6 years. Why? We're not getting an edge rusher. Those are where the edge rushers come from. Myles Garrett, that's where he comes from. Will Anderson last year, that's where they come from. You do that or you pay big for them. The developing an edge to more than a situational pass rusher like a Yannick Ngakoue, who get caught in the 2nd round, is slim to none. It happens occasionally, but it's not often. And the hit rates on late first round picks are god awful. So most of the time what teams do in this case is they pivot to defensive tackle on interior pressure. That's why interior pressures become more prevalent on good teams. They go and get 3-tech defensive tackles, and they're usually available in the mid-teens. And that's why we've got a situation where teams like Buffalo, Ed Oliver, Chiefs, Chris Jones, Ravens, Matabikwe, those teams have those middle pressure guys. It's not a shocker. Same thing with edge guys. Who we have? We have Von Miller. We had to pay for him. Hendrickson for the Bengals had to pay for him. Chiefs have been paying for edge rushers for years. Success and not. Frank Clark. So there are options everywhere that you can do, that you can take advantage of, but it doesn't mean they're great options. Moving up for one is not the option, especially in this draft. This is a bad defensive end draft. I would rather wait on a Chris Braswell in round 2. He's got juice, good athlete, decent size. He's going to be somebody who can learn under a Von Miller, and maybe pans out, maybe doesn't, but it's better than moving up for one for a guy who's marginally better, because none of these guys are elite. Good prospects, not great. So that's what you're looking at with those. Defensive tackle. There's only 2 that are worth a first-round pick. Murphy and Newton. And I question about Newton. I'm not 100% sure he's a first-round value. So that's how I feel about them. I don't think either will be there. I think that non-first-round talents go in the first round all the time. I have 24 first-round grades. I do not have 32. No one ever does. But there will be 32 picks, and some of these guys will get taken. So Jerzon Newton's probably going to get taken before us still, because we're at pick 28. So also, what are they going to get? 30% of the snaps? Maybe 40? No, probably 30 in our defense. We rotate defensive tackles heavily. Is he going to be that much better than what Jordan Phillips did in spot work? Maybe. How much does that move the needle? I know they were talking about, the one play where Chris Jones hit Josh Allen and he missed the touchdown throw. We were going to lose that game anyway. We went wide right again. But Mahomes is going to score when he gets the ball back. We didn't stop him all day. It wasn't because of middle pressure. Our drives were way too long. We gave them way too much rest on the sideline, and we had way too many injuries in the linebacker room, which hopefully will get fixed, was already fixed this year with the health and with Morrow coming in. So that's how I feel about that. And yeah, I don't know. The other thing is with wide receiver is we have a need today and in the future. Stephon Diggs is going to save us $6 million almost to cut him next year. And you can say what you want about him, just missing opportunities, ball hit him in the hands. He was open on one, Josh missed him. That was a few plays, not the whole 10, 12 games he underperformed in after the Miami game where he dominated. He looks like he ran out of gas after Miami. There were plays where he just looked slower. His feet didn't look as good. Like, he didn't look like he was moving at the same speed. The separation wasn't there like it had been. He just hasn't been who he was. So will he be okay this year? Probably. Is he a top 5 receiver in the league? No. Probably top 20 now. There's probably what he might be better than that. But what you can expect as, like, potentially what could happen is he could be a top 25 or 30 receiver now. We don't know that. Maybe he's fine. He's a hard worker. He might be able to do it. His skill set translates, but the feet movement, the quickness in his feet is where his route running comes from, and that slows down as you get old. He's going to be 31 this year. So what do you want to just bank on that? And Curtis Samuel, who's never had 1 year of 800 yards. Other than that, he's been Swiss Army knife guy, a good Swiss Army knife. Some injuries. And Khalil Shakir, y'all just want to run it back with the receivers we have? I feel like some of y'all want to run it back and don't think receivers a problem. I feel like you're doing that. That's what you believe, but you know it doesn't sound good. So what you're doing is saying, well, we can go guard at pick 28. Give me a break. Y'all are doing a lot of this to pivot to a situation that you'd prefer, and pretending like you're still cool with the wide receiver idea. We need weapons for Josh Allen. We need to protect him and surround him with players that can get open and do their thing while he also does his thing. He needs less pressure on him. That's why things look hard. He's having to squeeze the ball into tight windows, and thank goodness he can do it. But over time, his arm will wear down just like his legs will. And you're going to wonder why we never won a championship, because we never surrounded him with enough weapons. What did Aaron Rodgers ask for all those years? He never asked for another offensive guard or center. Not once. Aaron Rodgers asked for wide receivers, and they kept neglecting it until he was like, I'm done. He stayed an extra year, and then he was done. So that's what you're looking at right now. 5 or 6 years from now, is Allen's going to be like, damn, they gave me Diggs, and then what else? Bunch of 5th-round picks? You got to be kidding me, dude. You got to be kidding me. That's going to be a problem. So we need to prepare for today as a boundary weapon wide receiver 2, and which doesn't mean second in targets. It means can be 5th in targets or 4th. It probably will be 4th, but he can learn on the job, get ready. And then if we can need to save the cap next year, we're getting rid of Diggs, or if he's unhappy or complaining on Twitter more and we don't want to deal with this garbage anymore, because we're just using him until we don't need him anymore. That's really what we're talking about. We don't need you. We will let you go. Like once your headache becomes bigger than your production, you're not necessary anymore. Your services are no longer needed. So you're staying here. It's a business until we don't need that anymore. So that's where we're at with him. I like the guy. I think he's a hard worker. I believe he wants to be here probably. But I don't know what's in his head. The complaining about, well, y'all keep asking me the same question stuff in these. Dude, that was 3 months ago. More has happened. More tweets have happened. It's fair to ask from the media whether something's changed in your mindset. People change their mind all the time. So, dude, like you just keep doing it. People are going to keep asking you. Don't act surprised when we ask you because of what you've done and get mad because you're gaslighting the fan base that pays their hard-earned money to go see the games. Not all of us can afford trips to Paris every year for fashion shows. Sorry. It's just not the case. We care about this football team. So I don't want to go into a monologue about Steph Diggs, which is kind of turned into, but that's part of the issue with what we need to do. If Diggs leaves, we'll have the number 1 pick from this year. Hopefully a move up for Brian Thomas Jr. That's my dream. But if it doesn't happen, whatever. And then Curtis Samuel and Khalil Shakir in another year of Dalton Kincaid. And we're good. And then next year we can get your silly center in the first round that you want so bad. Like that's how I feel about this. I mean, I think I want impact now, not impact 2 years from now with some impact today that's marginally better than what we currently have on the roster. Does that make sense? So that's really the case. It's the opportunity cost, what you're giving up and how much you're gaining from the actual piece you bring in. So anyhow, I've gone on a little too long. I wanted to make this 15 minutes. We're sitting at 23, but I appreciate y'all tuning in. Please like, share, comment, subscribe. I need more subscribers. I will continue to do these. Tomorrow, we will do Pro Day wrap up with some of the bigger Pro Days that went on this week. Kevin and I will talk about like a fact or fiction kind of question game we'll do about it. Because there are a lot of questions about JJ McCarthy and Jaden Daniels and some of these other guys and where they're going to go and who they want, who's trading up for who and all this other good stuff. So it's exciting part of the season. I will see y'all then, and thanks for tuning in.